Welcome to Kickin with Sensei, and today we're joined by Crystal from Realize BJJ, an awesome channel on YouTube aimed towards females starting in Jiu-Jitsu and along their journey, I suppose, too. You're very welcome, Crystal. It's a pleasure to have you here today. And
yeah, it's good to be here.
Thank you. And how did you first get started in martial arts?
Well, I was always super active and I loved anything that involved like physical activity and then also problem solving. And so I just got addicted to hiking in the wintertime, ice climbing, rock climbing, anything that involved like skill. And when I found jiu-jitsu, I was doing ballroom dancing and it was getting kind of boring because you have to follow as a female. Like I was doing some leading, but then it's like, oh, I totally would have done something else for that, as part of the song. Like it was just getting boring. And about the same time, I remember seeing Ronda Rousey in the UFC and seeing how dominant she was. And that was just so inspiring. And it showed me how real it can be, because the UFC is definitely the testing ground for all of martial arts. I mean, if you see it work in the octagon, it's definitely going to work on the street. And so I was like, okay, well, I just needed another hobby, another like thing to concentrate on and get good at. And then I found jiu-jitsu. And jiu-jitsu is like, I've been doing it for 5 years now. And if you like things that are like involve skill, it's never ending. It is literally never ending. So I'm going to be doing this for a while.
And that's a big step from ballroom dancing to jiu-jitsu. It's a massive step. But do you think Ronda Rousey had a big influence on you in life? Do you think she's a great role model for young women?
Absolutely. It's one of those things. It's like, if you see somebody that looks like you doing something, it just makes you realize that you can do it too. If the only thing that you see as a female is men doing it, it just automatically, you just think that it's not for you for some reason. Like I remember my senior year of high school, I was in honors physics, and the teacher brought in a group of engineers, and there was one female, and they were talking about engineering. And I remember she was like, yeah, I like helped design this truck. And there was this little floorboard where you could step onto the truck. And she's like, I designed the part where, the little grates were a little bit smaller. That way your heel wouldn't get stuck in it. And I'm like, well, that's cool. But I think like it was cool that, I was like, I think I could do better than that. But it like inspired me to like, okay, well, engineering could be for me because, here's a female telling me about it. And so that's what inspired me to go into electrical engineering. If she never would have came to my class, I never would have thought it would be for me.
Yeah, definitely. And just as you mentioned Ronda Rousey too, I remember when my daughter was quite young, she was Kim Kardashian poster on her wall. And I remember replacing it with a Ronda Rousey poster, and now she's heavily involved in martial arts. So I think it worked. It worked.
Yeah, that's like, I think it's a better replacement.
Definitely.
Role model.
So you have a great YouTube channel, Realize BJJ. And where did the Realize BJJ name come from?
Yeah, so it was probably like about 7 years ago. I started a brand called Realize Life, and the purpose of Realize Life was to inspire people to step outside of their comfort zone and to try new things and new experiences. And I remember coming up with the name. I was hiking. I was on my way to the base camp of Everest, and I was thinking about like the process of making something into reality. So it's almost like you have it in your mind. It's like this wish list goal. And then in order to realize it, you have to like do some action in order to bring it into reality. And then you can keep on doing that with different things. And then pretty soon you have like a realized life. So initially when I started off with my YouTube, I got into like weightlifting and bodybuilding. And so I made a like realized bodybuilding life and wrote some books, and basically to help other people in the journey of like, hey, look, this is my experience. This is all the research that I did. Here's like a fun book that's like almost like a sister or a friend comically telling you what the journey is like without any BS, just being completely real and honest and sharing information. And then when I started jiu-jitsu, the first thing I did was I went on YouTube and I looked up like jiu-jitsu women rolling jiu-jitsu, and I only found like one channel. And I was like, oh, wow, like there is nobody, I mean, there's females in jujitsu, but nobody was talking about it. And like, it's just important to be able to, because it's just important to have like females speaking about it.
Yeah.
Like imagine going onto YouTube and seeing not one man like talking about jujitsu. It's all women. You're like, wait a minute, like this is kind of weird.
Yeah, that seems to be very common along martial arts. Really, I know when I started my channel, I tried to find role models for my 3 daughters, and couldn't find 5 female martial artists on YouTube. And, I actually launched a female warrior week last
Yeah,
week.
I saw that. I thought that was
And
really cool.
I just gathered as many female martial artists as I could, and I think the first year got 6, and then I run it again this year, and I think I was up to 17. So it's growing, but it's great to see so many out sharing their story. And but what advice would you give a young girl starting in martial arts or in jiu-jitsu?
Oh my goodness. There's something about fighting that is different than any other sport. For some reason, we all think we're good at it, even if the person had never stepped a foot inside a gym before, a jiu-jitsu gym or a boxing gym or a Muay Thai gym, for some reason, everybody thinks that they can kick ass, even though they literally have 0 skill if they've never trained before. It's just like, I don't know why. Like the first time I took a Muay Thai class, it's like you learn for 2 years, like keep your distance, do not stand in the pocket. And what did I do? Like I stood in the pocket and I got punched in the face for 5 minutes straight. And then I went and cried. Like, so my advice to people beginning is you are going to feel like you completely suck just because it's human nature to feel like you can fight, but in reality you can't, because it's a skill. If you've never spent any time doing a skill, like why do you think you're going to be good at it? I just think it's this biological thing that we have that we need to fight against. So it's completely normal to just think that you're going to go in there and be slapping on arm bars and triangles. But in reality, you are just going to be on the bottom of side control, on the bottom of mount, freaking out, trying not to lose your shit, and kind of hyperventilating. Like that is and then once you experience, like nobody ever really talks about that, you know what I mean? And so once you experience that, you go home and you're like, oh my God, I suck. I don't know if I want to do that again. But like just having small micro goals that are realistic, like, okay, it's your first day, having 1 3-minute roll a week. You know what I mean? That is like a good, just little micro goals. And during the roll, just try not to lose your shit. Just try to like breathe. And I remember when my coach telling me that, I was just like thinking that's a lame goal, but it's like a really valuable goal. Because if you can't breathe and you're panicked, then you're going to use up all of your energy. You're not going to be able to do anything going forward if you can't keep like yourself calm and collected when you're in a situation that sucks.
Excellent. And speaking of goals, now, what would be your proudest moment within jiu-jitsu? When did you have that kind of moment where you thought, I've set that goal and I've smashed it today?
Yeah, I think my proudest moments are the times when I did something that I was absolutely scared to do. Like, for example, going into your first competition. And I remember my first competition, I did it like 3 months after starting. And because there was so few women, they just basically clumped all of us together. So my first match was I was barely a 1-stripe white belt, like barely. She was, I think, a 3-stripe blue belt with MMA experience. All right, like let me, so I went in there and for some reason I thought I could do a judo hip throw, even though I practiced it for probably like a month. So I tried that. It failed. She ended up taking my back and choking me out. So even though it's like, it's important not to focus so much like on the results. Like some people would look at that and be like, oh my God, like I suck. That was horrible. But it was like having the bravery to be able to face what you fear and continuously doing that and not being afraid to fail, because you are going to have to fail so much to get any skill in jiu-jitsu. Like how many times have I failed a double leg? Hundreds. And it's like failing it having the consequence of somebody sprawling, getting your face smashed. So there's like a negative reinforcement, and then just having the courage to keep on doing that, even especially when you're at the beginning of the skill and you don't have any historical evidence of it even working, but you still have to have this blind faith and do it with 100% commitment, even though in the back of your mind, you're like, is this really going to work? I don't know. Let's see what happens.
That's it, mate. I've recently actually taken a jiu-jitsu class myself. I haven't trained much on it, but I've 2 black belts in other systems, and I went in and got smashed. But I knew it was coming. But
oh yeah, like it is. and it will always happen. Like there's always somebody that's going to be better than you on the mat. Like that you will never rise above being smashed.
Oh, that's it. I don't make it easy either. Now I've kind of went in and decided to roll with a brown belt on my first day, so I've made it quite challenging. And then actually later today, I'm actually going to fight with a kickboxer.
Oh, nice.
4 times world champion. So again, not an easy battle, but
yep.
You have to face these things.
Yeah, I think like another proud moment is like my first MMA fight. Yeah. And then taking another MMA fight, and it's it's scary, it's interesting how you can just like kind of psych yourself out. Yeah. And it's just very easy to do. But it's just like feeling the fear, and then knowing that it's fear, and then knowing how proud of yourself you're going to be if you just face it and just do it anyway.
Yeah, definitely. And have you any big goals set at the minute? Things you'd like to achieve in the future?
Yep. So I have an MMA fight coming up on August 7th. So that's like my next big goal. And I also started a Patreon on YouTube. I'm not on YouTube, sorry, a Patreon on Patreon. So Realize BJJ Life on Patreon. And it's funny because I'll tell you a story of like, it's interesting when you think you do something and then you realize maybe why you actually did it, like the underlying. So when my mom she must have been 22 or 23, she moved away from home, and she moved to like a city in Maine. And she was in her apartment, and the landlord did this to her and like a couple other women, but the landlord broke in, put a gun to her head, raped her, and she was a virgin at the time. That's how I was conceived. So she like wanted to keep me because she's like, he's already taken something from me. Why should I kill something innocent? And she like raised me with such like patience and love and understanding. And it made me want to like, okay, well, she sacrificed her life for me. Like I am going to be the best that I can possibly be to make her like know that her efforts weren't in vain. Yeah. And then when I started jujitsu, like that was never really in my mind at all. And then when I started learning about self-defense and the real situations of how women actually get raped, like the situation that occurred with my mother is like a very small percentage when it occurs with a weapon. The vast majority of rapes happen when it's basically like either a miscommunication or the female just feels so awkward that she freezes. And so I'm like, oh my goodness, like if a female is training jujitsu, she has such a constant contact with other people that the body contact doesn't faze her anymore. And that gives her such a high degree of self-defense in that of itself. And then on top of that, being able to fight and override that freeze response because of rolling, because of grappling is something that's super valuable. And I'm like, I could save the vast majority of women if I can just like be myself and show it, you know what I mean? Like, this is what I'm doing, and here it is. And I remember I got a message from one of my Patreons, and she was like, thank you so much, Crystal. She's like, I started following your YouTube about a year ago, and I was raped, and I started jujitsu after watching your channel. And she's like, I realized that I could have fought off my attacker just from like, you know, having a closed guard, going to an open guard and like kicking him off me. She's like, I realize now after training that it would have been like so possible, but at the time you're so scared and you're not used to that type of contact that it feels insurmountable, when in actuality it's like, holy crap, you could train for a couple of months and develop the skill if you're rolling to be able to handle yourself.
Excellent.
But this is just like with I'm not talking about like super violent. I'm talking about like the like the super violent, like that would require a little more training. But
it is such a great art for self-defense, especially for women. And the guard position is such a common position that someone under attack would find themselves in. So there's so much time spent in the guard, you get that comfortable in it. And it really gives you that confidence in that position to kind of control the situation, I suppose.
Yes, like I try to, because the guard is one of those things where it's like an airbag, right? You know, it's like it's a holy shit moment. You know, you never want to be on your back, but since we're here, we might as well know how to break some arms and choke somebody out. I remember I was rolling with a beginner and she like immediately laid on her back and I'm like, what are you doing? Like, you need to, like, the first thing is to try to get to a dominant position. And then, you know, as far as like self-defense for a female goes, it's like sometimes you do find yourself in the guard position, but I'm always like an advocate of like, just go for mount. That way, if things go south, you're already in mount.
Yeah, that's it. And what's your favorite submission?
I would say rear naked choke.
Yeah.
Because it is like, to take the back is pretty much the optimum position in jiu-jitsu. And in terms of like self-defense, you know, rendering your opponent or another person unconscious is the 100% sure way to diffuse the situation. If it's a broken arm, sometimes they can fight through that. Sometimes it's adrenaline, and it's not a surefire way that you are going to end the confrontation.
Yeah.
So if somebody's unconscious, then they're definitely not going to be able to do anything.
Very true. I have a daughter now. She's 10 and loves the armbar, and it's unusual. Like, even when I play rolling with her, she can get an armbar from anywhere. It's just her favorite submission. She gets it from anywhere. But it's great to see her when we've actually put her in class rolling and put her in an awkward position. And somewhere she finds an armbar. That's
awesome.
I think she's the next Ronda Rousey on her hands. But...
Exactly. It's like, but yeah, all she needs to know is like, once you break the arm, you just have to like systematically like dismantle them. So like, then you can always like go to the back from the arm.
That's it now. And finally, Crystal, how can people find you online?
They can just if they go to YouTube, if they type in Realize BJJ Life, they can find me. You can find me on Patreon under the same name.
Excellent. And I'll put links in the description there as well. And I can't recommend the Patreon enough. I've joined it myself very recently and some great videos on there. So thank you today for coming on, Crystal. It was a pleasure speaking with you.
Awesome.
And,